Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Let's hop in. So we had the festival one, the one festival, and honestly, as it was coming down to the wire here, um, I just lost interest in trying to get all the rewards. I wasn't anywhere close, as it were. We definitely have some ranked daily stuff that is just piled up also around that. Lifetime stuff, of course, doesn't really matter. Um, but yeah, I got the gold, I got the crystals, the in game currency. I got the 300 boost for getting halfway through. And here we are at past level 50 on the dual pass, which the amount of time to do the dual pass, there's still 63 days left, and yet this festival was just a nightmare. Um, like the festival is over. I got to 1150, which did not get me even a single one of the legacy packs. But yeah, I was just not getting victories with those loner decks at all. It I was much more happy to either do nothing and sleep uh, or work on other projects. Mostly finishing up Mist 4, which I did finish Mist 4. Very short game, very bad Mist game, really. Like, the final puzzles really suck. Very, I would say at least 25% of Mist 4 has puzzles that just don't feel like Mist, whatever that means to my mind. There's only 4 ages, and one of them is the starter tutorial area. And none of the ages or different worlds you go to are that big. It's a real short game. It's hashing out stories that a story and a narrative that's not really that good. Um, but yeah, I finished it. I probably will never play Mist 4 again in my life. Same is probably true for Mist 5. I'll play it one more time for footage and then probably never play it again. Um, but yeah, I would say Mist 4 and Mist 5 are the worst of the Mist series. And it does open up an idea where if Cyan was going to go back and make a new Mist 3, just get rid of Mist 3 Exile because it was made by Presto Software, and get rid of Mist 4 and 5 because they were made by Ubisoft. Uh, they probably should just add some time travel and change the events. Arguably, a soft reboot is probably better than that, though, because there are elements that are added later in the later games that even if you were to change the timeline, you would still expect the magic to expand in the crazy way that it does. Mist 1 and Riven, the sequel of Mist, basically just had the art, and in the art, as they call it, it's called, quote, the art. You could make descriptive books and linking books, and maybe they didn't, and they never really explained anything more than that. Mist 3 tried to explain it, but still tried to stay within the art. But then Mist 4 introduces a whole different magic in which you can see memories in certain locations and on certain objects. Uru introduces a whole different kind of magic. And Mist 5 introduces a whole different kind of magic that's just like not connected. And really it should be one type of magic per universe, narrative universe. Yeah. I guess there's really no point in just sitting here and looking at this. Obviously, I didn't get this festival title. I didn't really care. But yeah, a soft reboot would probably be the best. Arguably, you get rid of the Atreus and his family in general as characters. what I think you do is you do a soft reboot. You set it in the universe of Myst 100 years in the future. You add technology that can copy descriptive books and linking books. Uru kind of did that. You put in some very basic gameplay mechanics, and you gotta be a little bit more open world as far as each age, where you can go everywhere. But one of the things, as stupid as it may sound, is when you look at like how Skyrim and Bethesda became the company known for creating amazing dynamic worlds, that title really should have been Cyan and Mist. Like, they did so much of a better job writing characters and stories. And in all fairness, it wouldn't even be Skyrim to Mist 1 comparison that would be fair. It would be closer to a comparison of Oblivion to Mist 1. But yeah, you said it. You put in lockpicking. As stupid as it sounds, as redundant as it is, you just have more doors, and some doors have locks that you just have to pick as instead of a puzzle, or you create some kind of puzzle that is effectively a lock picking puzzle that you do multiple times. Myst kind of fails completely at that aspect. Every time you see a puzzle in any Myst game, it's pretty much a bespoke puzzle that's never reused or revisited. Abduction, I suppose, has one giant puzzle where you do the same thing several times, and Riven is just one giant puzzle. The entire island synergizes around that one final puzzle. One of the tricks about Riven certainly is that there's a bunch of animals and sounds, and that makes it very much feel like in Myst 4 and all future games, even Myst 3, after Riven, it basically tells you have to pay attention to all the animals and all the sound effects and all the footprints that those animals might make, even though an artist, a creator of a game, may just want to put an animal and more life in a game. And certainly for Myst, having more life is another thing that a modern reboot would need to do, where you're going to have some NPCs. You're going to have other travelers that are going to try to knock you down and steal your books. You're going to have NPCs giving you quests. You're going to have just basic fetch quest concepts. I still would think a Myst reboot would probably be best if it's something closer to a BioShock than a Skyrim, where it's still linear levels, but in each linear level there's bigger open areas. The main problem with Myst games, though, is that they are locked to absolute points, and when you click forward, you move from a single spot where you're standing to another spot 20 feet away where you're standing. So you need actual walking more than just you can jump over walls. Yeah, adding jumping to a Myst game, probably not a smart move. But yeah, NPCs, fetch quests, people potentially invading your world, stealing your linking books. I think you probably add an energy system too. If you're setting this in the future and you have some kind of electronic device that can copy linking books or like recover linking books that have now faded, you may have to just wander to different points of interest and use those points of interest as a place to gather energy, and that's not too different from Uru. I also think you're going to want to implement points of interest where a camera takes pictures, not just to capture energy. There is a camera in Myst 4, but you do not do anything with it at all. It is pointlessly unnecessary. it helps the game somewhat, but a modern reboot of Myst would have breadcrumbs and actual goals. There were several times where I wasn't really getting what I was supposed to be doing and was wandering around. In fact, in Myst 4, there's a whole zip system where you can fast travel to locations, and it shows you 3 locations when you click on it, but then there's tiny little arrows on the left and right that I never saw, and so I wandered around for at least 20 minutes trying to get through a maze, which I would definitely get rid of mazes as a concept. Myst puzzles are supposed to be high-minded and intellectual. They're not supposed to be just wander around this maze until you find it, find your way through it. Now, I guess some people might try to argue that mazes are for intellectuals, but I don't really think that's the case. When you think about it, we have rats doing mazes to test their level of intelligence. We give maze puzzles to little kids. No adult, no professor at a college is doing a maze puzzle. A lot of what Myst games, particularly Myst 4, was just wasting your time and making the game very long. Oddly, they have, like, I believe it's Peter Gabriel voice a character at the end and sing a voiced song near the end of the game. So it feels like Ubisoft, on top of hiring this brand new team to make Myst 4, also engaged in just stunt hiring of a celebrity and probably wasted a lot of money on that. Honestly, that final age of Serenia in Myst 4, if you told me that was for a completely different game, I would believe you. If in pre-production that this was a pitch that was for a completely different game, I would totally believe that. Oh, that was a waste. I gotta get better about when I play Max C. But yeah, it's a shame that Cyan really stopped making games for at least a decade, and because that would have been the thing that should have happened more than anything, is that if they had just kept on moving forward, they had a decent chance of being like Electronic Arts or Ubisoft, just one of these big companies. Maybe they wouldn't be doing that much, but they would have at least enough foundation to still feel like a AAA publisher, a developer. At a certain level, I could see Cyan being a publisher for other games like they are trying to do now. If they had done that a lot earlier, that could have kept them afloat and kept them just always in the back of their mind thinking about making another Myst game. And now that they're finally getting around to pretending like they are making a new Myst-like game, it's just taking far too long. It took, according to the credits, only 3 years to make Myst 3, which is an incredibly small amount of time. I mean, not Myst 3, Myst 4. Like, it probably should have been closer to 4 to 8 years. And it definitely feels like Ubisoft was the only people who were really interested in making, getting the game out quickly, while Cyan was being way too ambitious trying to make a MMO in Uru. So, arguably, it's not even an argument that they weren't ambitious and they just took their money and closed up shop effectively and went into maintenance mode, reselling and remastering Myst over and over again. It's that they blew all of their ambition on the wrong technology, on too too complicated technology, too groundbreaking technology, and they just didn't really have a chance for it. And then, and their efforts to make Uru, I don't think led to any other MMO actually succeeding either. So it's not like it helped the game industry in any real way. So yeah, you have to be careful. Certainly, you want ambition, but you also want some practicality with your ambition, and it was just not practical to expect Uru to succeed. Anyways, let's move forward. I also spent a little bit of time for this accountability section working on my YouTube Shorts. Right now the YouTube Shorts are labeled as PC Game Daily. I wouldn't be opposed to changing it to Daily PC Game. But I did search that phrase, PC Game Daily, and my shorts pretty much own that search result, which is great, but that also probably means nobody is searching that exact phrase on YouTube. I did also look at if this and that to see if maybe I could move my potentially move the videos over from YouTube to Instagram, but doesn't seem like if this and that could do that automatically. Maybe there's another way that could be done that I'll maybe get around to researching at some point. But yeah, if I am effectively making Instagram and Facebook story type posts, although shorts and stories on YouTube mean different things. Stories you can only do with a cell phone, and basically live to tape, at least. Whereas shorts you can upload as recorded videos. But yeah, if I am going to effectively do that anyways, it would make a decent amount of sense to try and protect people from freebooting, try to stop freebooters from uploading videos and pretending to be me on services, which that happens to big content creators. I don't know if it really happens to small content creators. It probably does. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it happens to just kind of everybody and anybody. But also, on top of that, maybe the Instagram crowd would appreciate me being on that service. I don't know, though. If anything, it kind of feels like the Instagram fad, if it still is even that popular, is about to collapse quite a bit. And this may just be wishful thinking on my part, but they are starting to put out stories about doing different types of age verification, whereas up until this point Instagram has not really tried to be too accurate about age verification. So if most people on Instagram are below 13 years old, and then all of a sudden they start to actually try to enforce the law and start to actually age verify those below 13-year-old fans, or below 18-year-old fans even, then they may lose their entire audience and lose their entire relevancy in the first place. Suffice it to say, it would be very stupid to focus too much on these YouTube shorts. I'm trying to give them the best chance they could possibly get, but at a certain level it is just a quick and easy additional thing I'm doing it is not intended to replace anything. Oh, okay. Well, then we'll just win. Boy, is it nice to get back to playing a meta deck that can actually win. Just super, super easy compared to that Festival 1. Let's see. I'm scrolling down my Twitter feed, which I've already done a couple times, so really don't need to. As far as other things I did, some of these YouTube channels are now straight up putting this automated element on their channels. On some of these Twitter feeds are. The truth is, most Twitter feeds, I imagine, are automated at a certain level, and that you'll be lucky if there's actually somebody that would ever even look at it. The Steam Deck put out something 38 minutes ago as a Twitter channel. Hello, some great news on the production front. We've just sent the last batch of our Q2 emails, and we'll start sending Q3 reservation emails on the 30th. Production is picked up, and after today we'll be shipping more than double the number of Steam Decks every week. Which double the number but not telling you the number might mean they were shipping one a week, and now they're shipping two. I don't believe that's the case, though. I have seen a slight pickup of people having actual Steam Decks in their hands instead of it just being like Linus from Linus Tech Tips and kind of nobody else. Just big YouTubers and big influencers getting their hands on it. Linus from Tech Tips, even though this has nothing to do with video games, he is dangerously getting close to being one of those, to shifting completely to being a YouTuber that is just always flexing and spending ridiculous amounts of money, or claiming that they've spent a ridiculous amount of money. Yeah, because some of his projects, like a lot of his projects were crazy and stupid, certainly, but some of his projects are now getting crazy, stupid, and expensive. And what he has spent money on to improve and build out his studios, those numbers are just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. Although, in all fairness, he is trying to do his whole float plane thing, where as a somewhat competitor to YouTube. Unfortunately, there's a lot of somewhat competitors to YouTube, and none of them are open to any small-time creators, and none of them seem to have any desire at all to potentially be full competitors. Like the real competition, if YouTube were to disappear tomorrow, would just break the site into several different smaller sites. And sadly, that would probably mean I would be sent off to Twitch because I cover video games, and then there would be some like beauty site that does just beauty tips, and then cooking site that just does cooking, and it would not be better. It would be worse. I imagine when there was only one TV channel, that a lot of people were upset when it spread to two TV channels. Although you can promise more going to 2 TV channels. It took decades, I imagine, before they started to really realize that having hundreds of channels in cable was not a better system. Moving on back to video game stuff. RetroArch is now on the Windows Package Manager, which apparently is a program to kind of automatically install things. I suppose it's a command line winget install RetroArch. So that's just adding more support for people who might want to do it differently. It doesn't seem like that is directly ending up in the storefront, though. Because that would be more what I would think it would do, is you would end up in the storefront with RetroArch. And that might be an indication more than you realize of the way Windows 11 is going to end up going. Because Windows 11 in particular may try to lock down the ability to install programs unless it's being verified more by Windows and authorized more by Windows, Microsoft. Yeah. At a certain point, we may very well need to see somebody like Major Nelson, Larry Herb, take over a different department of Microsoft, or just a different department of Microsoft needs to gain power again, because they're definitely backsliding on the Windows front, and that affects gamers as much as at some point they're going to say DirectX 12 features are going to be exclusive to Windows 11, or DirectX 13 features will be exclusive to Windows 11 for no reason. The patches are getting worse, the updates are getting worse, and fewer between as far as Windows 10. There's a heavy push towards having a Microsoft account and potentially buying storage from Microsoft. It's very bait and switchy as far as what they sold Windows 10 as, and now. I guess there's no new news on the American McGee front. As far as I can tell, either Grimm did come back on Steam, or it is still not back on Steam after being accidentally removed. So, as far as actually seeing American McGee in the live stream, I haven't seen anything like that. That does seem like he... they are still putting out the YouTube shorts showing off the little bizarre, macabre stuffed creatures that Spicy Horse sells, but those are just some female Asians' hands showing off things. We'll check Grimm when I get an opportunity here. The Steam Summer Sale is happening. I don't think I'll probably spend any real money, but there was this mini game where this guy says he's from the future and he wants you to find games amongst the listings that are from the future. And then let's see. Let me see if I can just reload this and if it will actually load all the pictures. This spoilers for this. You would have earned this badge. So you go and find all these fake games, and then you click on them like it would take you to a Steam page, and it doesn't. it's actually fairly easy to find the fake games if you want to, because it will say, the price will say TH KNX or something like that instead of a price, and it won't actually be a link that you can open in a new window. If you right click on it, it'll just be a JavaScript pop-up. Let's see. This guy's banished a ridiculous amount of cards to gain a ridiculous amount of health. Oh, this may let me special summon this. Anyways, so back to the Steam game. You have when you find the game, you get these little reward animations that a lot of these feel very reminiscent of animations that like a Adult Swim animation studio animator would make, which I don't know if that's just an indication that there really is no established Western animation style, and definitely not one that's really good, or if there's just not that many animators and they are just hiring the same people. I would highly recommend watching Love and Death and Robots on Netflix to just see the wide variety of animation styles that at least Netflix is able to hire. Because there's a lot of variety there. Although in this third season, there's definitely one that they swear up and down is animated, and I don't think it's animated at all. Some of them definitely feel like they've been rotoscoped, so they shot live action film and then they drew over them. But there's one specifically that's like a Indian or Persian type story where there's this woman in this creature, this water spirit, covered in golden gems, and she screams, and the screaming causes all the men to flip around in circles and spin and try to get as close to her as possible, which causes them all to drown in her lake because she can walk on water and the lake is actually really deep. And you follow this kind of greedy soldier that's deaf, so he doesn't hear the scream, so he manages to potentially escape. But yeah, all throughout that, while there have been several of these shorts in Love and Death and Robots that look very close to being realistic, they still had that uncanny valley, where this one, it doesn't look animated to me at all. I don't think it is. I think it's just real. And at a certain point, if the idea is you're going to have an anthology series and it's going to have either Love, Death, or Robots, or some combination wherein you can just pretty much have anything, including live action. But the two previous seasons have very specifically been animation only. But in all fairness, the third season also has a pirate story that has no real love, nor does it have robots. It definitely has death in it. So they seemed like, particularly in the pandemic, they may have just loosened their rules. I imagine a lot of these are shorts that were created in the first place, and then after the fact were purchased for release as a compilation. That would definitely make a lot of sense too. Yeah, that would totally make sense if they were never actually intended to be compiled into this anthology series. Um, but yeah, that highlights, to get back to what I was originally talking about, that highlights the fact that, yeah, these animations definitely have that Ren and Stimpy, Nickelodeon weird drawing style to them. The actual games was one called Guitar Billionaire. They would give you a clue as to what the game was for you to run around and look at it. And I definitely spent too much time. It was probably an hour at most, but it was a wasted hour looking for these games just to get a badge. And then when you find the actual game, you are then not really being pointed to any real world games. The trick, I suppose, is that they kept you looking through the list of other games while you're looking for it, but arguably you could very easily not pay attention to any of the real games as you're looking for the fake games. So it does seem like it's odd that you're wasting shelf space with hidden fake space. If Walmart, for instance, were to put a fake DVD on its DVD shelves, that would probably piss off all the people selling real DVDs quite a bit, and it would waste the limited resource of the amount of shelf space. While digitally speaking, there's an unlimited amount of shelf space on Steam's storefront. Mentally speaking, as far as humans, they only have so much attention span. So, yeah, humans only have a certain amount of attention span there. So you find Guitar Billionaire, and then it suggests a skating game and a skiing game and one rhythm game, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. Then you could just click and see that there's probably be somewhere between 15 and 18 games they would suggest. Next one was called Custard Castle Small Claims Court. And in that they're suggesting Ace Attorney, which kind of makes sense, but then Balloons Tower Defense 6 and Ni no Kuni are all fairly different games. Tunic. And see, the games they're suggesting sometimes here are definitely games you already own, so they didn't even program these suggestions to filter out things that you already own. So, like, it would make a lot more sense to filter that list and customize it. I'm about to take 10,000 damage. This guy has 37 cards, I have 31. Yep. Yeah, undoubtedly, it's been years since they've actually tried to make a Steam sale event matter. The next game was called The Bass Ain't Biting 2022, which tries to show fishing or water related games, but then Soma is set underwater, but it's a horror game. So they really are just all over the place. Now, there were some games when I was looking, like this, not koi farming, but I think there was a kaiju fishing game that caught my attention. That's not even being mentioned here amongst the recommendations. Next was Dead Sequel Zoo Magnate. Which, yeah. It's just ridiculous games. And then next game was actually registered Frankenstein's Monsters, like Actually, which is that College Humor game show that I think is probably the only thing that was funny before College Humor pretty much completely fell apart. And I think they put the Actually game show either behind a paywall before they fell apart and lost all their funding, or either they just stopped doing it completely. I set this here. Activate this effect here. Like when you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh, you really do need to make this kind of pattern where unless there's a reason for things to line up, you shouldn't line them up, and you should put one thing in each row. Always. Okay. Okay. Now, activate this. I think this effect only lets me destroy face-up things. But we destroy that, then we transfer this over multiple times. Which will just reduce this down to 100. So I would have done more damage just attacking. The next game on it was called It's Probably Fine. You've got 37 unpaid parking tickets. You just got pulled over. Blah, blah, blah. So, yeah. These games are pretty ridiculous, pretty stupid. Next one was Get the King to the Toilet. Help get the king to the toilet. Next was the Consecration of Esthemy, which almost sounds like a real game. Here they are. According to Kotaku, it's the next Binding of Isaac game, which, frankly, fake quoting people might be liable, even if it is fairly obvious that it's parody. You probably shouldn't quote a real game journal site with a fake quote. See, that was a real mistake there. I should not have lined up 3 things, because there is a possibility he has something that activates if you have 3 things lined up. Yep. Why he chose to activate that then, I don't know. Now we have like 4 things lined up. Let's see. The next game was Pro Poker Amateur, which again makes no sense. And we have a game called Hold Your Farts. And then that was it. And then you get this badge of this retro futuristic, or this badge, one or the other. And that's pretty much the entire game. Like, now, I haven't even been sticking to it, but the other part of the Steam Summer Sale is that they are giving trading cards, and if you go through the curated feed. So if you go through the curator feed, you could get some trading cards, and then you could either turn those into crystals and sell them, or sell them. I'm not sure you actually even can sell them. Last time I think they made it so that the summer sale free given away cards are not even tradable anymore. And so if that is still the case, then best case scenario, you might be able to figure out something you can do. Interesting. Why did that effect not happen? I feel like all my effects are being cancelled. If I was gonna spend something, I did make a list here of things that I would personally pick. I don't know how helpful it is. This Landlord of the Woods is like a weird puzzle game for 84 cents. Clocker is $1.79 as kind of a point and click adventure. I could get the rest of the Devil Came Through Here trilogy, which is the Cat Lady, Downfall, and Lorelei. Effectively, that would just be buying the soundtracks for 84 cents. Which is not a terrible thought, although I really have no big need to own the soundtracks. Oh, I didn't have another one in the graveyard, did I? Alright, well, can't activate this effect, so let's see if we can activate this effect. Just seems like none of the effects. Something here is saying no effects can be activated. Let's see if this works. 1, 2, 3, 4. Doesn't really matter. Nope. None of the effects are working, so I've lost. Unless there's something I can do over here. Path to Menacing as a game is 99 cents. Degrees of Separation is $1.99. I could get Soul Calibur 6 Deluxe Edition for $13.49. The Suicide of Rachel Foster for $2.69. Dark for $3.59. In comparison, that's probably too expensive, so I'd remove that just to get it down even more. Origami for $3.99 might be a little too expensive too. See, I didn't even really do a second pass on this, so I'll remove that. Haven Moon for $1.99 is never going to get any cheaper. The Game of the Year edition on Steam of Witcher 3 for $9.99 is not too bad. Corian Undying Thoughts for $4.99 is probably the cheapest you're going to get it. These are two Myst clone type games. Assassin's Creed Origins Deluxe Editions for $13.99 is a fine game. Transference for $4.99, maybe okay at that price, maybe not. Code Vein Deluxe Edition for $15.99 is probably not going to get much cheaper than that. And then there's Unforgiving and Northern Hymn for $2.99, and then a kind of spiritual successor, Absolov End of Gods for $4.99. I could get a Disney Winnie the Pooh game. I think it's a Disney game. Maybe it's not. For $1.79. I could get one or more of the Sudoku games, all made pretty much by the same Sudoku expert YouTuber. But these particularly are always 49 cents when they go during the sale. You could get the Missing JJ Macfield for $5.99. That's probably not going to get any cheaper because it's a niche Japanese game. You can get Ginny LeClue Detective for $3.99, which is not terrible. You could get Gun Gal Pixies, which is a anime game of running around as pixies shooting guns for $7.49, which that is a much more reasonable price. And then a platforming puzzle game called Dokuro for 99 cents. So that was kind of my quick pick. And that would get me to like $103. Or arguably, if anybody wants to support me, they could certainly gift these games. I'm not looking for any big things here. Rogue Legacy 2 for $19.99 would be a bigger concept. Star Wars Fallen Order for $9.99 is kind of a big one too. Yeah. But then you probably would want the deluxe edition for $14.99. I made these picks by just doing a quick look at my wish list, and seeing what was at least 75% or more off, and then looking at games I didn't play, so I surrendered. That doesn't matter. I was going to lose anyways. But yeah, I think there definitely is just this wide variety as far as each summer sale as to how much success you really will have as far as savings, how many games do you plan on playing in the next year. It is perhaps now more than ever a question as to like, what are you certain your finances are going to be the same or better in the next year? Are you certain the amount of free time you're going to have are going to be the same or better in the next year? And that's going to be a very personal question. Although for a lot of people, the answer is going to be no, your finances are going to be worse and your hours are going to be higher as far as hours of working versus hours of having free time to play video games. The more games you already have on Steam, the worse every Steam sale inevitably has to be, because you have to dig deeper and deeper to try to find something. And for my level, yeah, there probably is 2,000 to 3,000 games on my wish list. But if I was to get everything on my wish list, some of which I probably don't even really want, like, I couldn't make another wish list of another 3,000 games. It would be scraping the bottom of the barrel, really, at that point. And I'm already at this point, if I never got another game, I would be alright. Like, I could play every game I already own on Steam, and if I managed to make footage around that, it would probably be 10 plus years before I even got back to playing a game a second time. if being forced to do that. I think I have played Portal 2 like twice, and I think in part I did that because I literally had forgotten I had already played it. Let's see. But yeah, doesn't seem like there's any big thing happening in the Steam Summer Sale. I didn't check the Steam Deck, but I don't think there's a discount there. We should check that. And I didn't check the Oculus. Half-Life Alyx is on sale, so now would be a good time to get it if you have a VR headset that can play Half-Life Alyx. But yeah, they don't really have anything they can offer. I bet any Steam Link machines or Steam controllers, I bet those don't even exist anymore as listings. The Valve Complete Pack potentially would be something that you would want to buy it and get that cheap. At a certain level, I think Valve is leaving money on the table by not discounting gift cards. Like, pretty much, because other gift cards work around the concept of people not using them and forgetting about them, or not using them and forgetting about them for long enough that you can make a decent amount of interest on the free loan that you're giving people. If every Steam summer sale it was 10% off a gift card, I could see charging up and having $200-300 of credit on my Steam account, and then anytime there's a brand new game, buying it at that premium and spending it for brand new AAA games. I could see a lot of people doing that. Personally, I probably would figure out real quick that that's not a good deal, but I think a lot of people would do that. Also, I think a lot of parents would like that, to be able to say, in the summer sales, you get $100. You can spend it now, or you can wait later, and then they can say, well, you spent your $100 worth of credit already, so you're not getting another $100. Now, how well that works for parents is probably not much. Kids definitely are not good about saving money. Neither are adults really, but at least you could work on that pretense, or try to teach them the concept of delayed gratification as much as possible. Moving on to actual video game news, since it's been nearly an hour. Man, it's this first hour in which I just start warming up that I need to be better at. Probably more than the last hour, in which I'm usually half asleep or dragging. Speaking of dragging, also, I listen to my own voice. Like, with this recliner chair playing Myst 4, like, boy did I not like what I heard. It just doesn't come off as energetic, and at a certain level, I just have to recognize, yeah, I am not energetic. I'm not one of those YouTubers that's going to be, hey, what's up, guys? Let's get into this. But first, here's my sponsor, NordVPN. Like, doing that is exhausting, certainly, and it's a fake amount of energy. But I wish it wouldn't be a fake amount of energy to me. Which might be a weird way of saying, if there was some kind of like Adderall / cocaine that was legal and safe, I might consider that. The closest thing I have is like 5-hour energy drink, and even that doesn't really make me energetic and enthusiastic. Plus, it's it would be really, really expensive and detrimental to my health to drink a 5-hour energy drink every time I recorded, or every day even. I suppose that's what a lot of people do with coffee too, is that they are drinking caffeine, either Cokes or coffee, as a stimulant, and I don't engage in any of that, although I do engage in a lot of sugar, which honestly more makes me sleepy than anything. In all fairness, though, I would also probably be annoyed if I listened to some of my pre-recordings and I was hyped up on sugar or coffee or caffeine or something. I'd probably find that just as annoying. It very much is probably grass is always greener on the other side type concept. We can pull this off, I think. Maybe not. If I had summoned this, I might have been able to pull this off. Oh, speaking of other things I wasted times on, I also watched on Netflix this new series called God's Favorite Idiot. I'll tell you immediately, don't bother watching it. It ends on a cliffhanger, which they seem to be increasingly more willing to do that, even if the cliffhanger is only a couple of days or weeks away. But then also it's just kind of a bad series. Same is kind of true in the fact that it ends on a cliffhanger for Stranger Things. I thought I had waited long enough that all of the series was out for the newest season of Stranger Things. For as long as it is, and for as much as I complained about how long it was, it is ironic that I'm also in a situation where I'm complaining about the series ending on, or pausing on, a cliffhanger. Yeah, probably lost here. Clearly, if I have time to watch all this stuff on Netflix, I have more time to make recordings, and I am trying to get back into that. Certainly. I almost certainly need to start recording the footage. I need to schedule some recordings first, and then I need to start recording for October, Halloween month, some horror games. I put in my new RAM on my computer, and then I ran a memory test just to check it. It is about 1.5 times faster. Like, by default, without the XMP memory enabled, the RAM that I was using was running at 2.1 megahertz, where this is 3.6 megahertz. So yeah, that's a big difference as far as how fast you load the RAM in. I'm back to 64 gigabytes. I should consider re-enabling some of the memory hogging plugins so that pages are preloaded now again on Chrome, so we can move a little bit faster. And yeah, I installed it. I had a bit of a hassle with it because the logo was pointing the opposite direction from what I was expecting, so I was being as gentle as possible. I did not want to break this because RAM is expensive, and certainly I now have either 2 to 3, maybe even 4 sticks of RAM that are extra, which is not a big deal, but that's a lot of money still, because of G.Skill just not really having their RAM be trustworthy in my mind or consistent in its XMP profile binning. So it claims it can handle the speed, but I don't think it quite can. But maybe it could. Maybe there was nothing wrong with G.Skill, and it was just all the CPU breaking any RAM, and it would have broken any RAM at all. But yeah, the logo was backwards. I was being very careful, and I was struggling with that. And then I realized, oh nope, it's got to go the other way. Flip it around, install it, and then I ran a memory test, the Windows memory test, on it just to make sure. And so now it is just a it is just another day, another step towards confidence. I seriously doubt Myst 4 was going to cause any video errors or computer trouble at all, being such an incredibly old game. And that I finished Myst 4 before I put in a new RAM. So this is the first recording I've done with the new RAM, and it seems fine. It would be incredibly weird if I went several weeks without any network problems with the new RAM, because I seriously question how the network frame drops could be happening if on different RAM. The hotkey issue that I believe exists in OBS, I tried to report that to Advanced Scene Switcher, and we'll see if maybe they'll find out what the problem is there. I think it is Advanced Scene Switcher interacting with OBS. If it's not, then maybe I should just report it directly to OBS as a bug. But that was causing my screen to flicker when hotkeys were enabled in a certain way in OBS. But it's not the same bug that we were having when we had the Trusted Platform module enabled. So I think I fixed it, and it just happens to be another bug that was introduced in the latest update of either Advanced Scene Switcher or OBS itself. And I'm sure nobody cares about this, so let's actually cover video game news instead of just rambling. GameStop is holding another PlayStation 5 in-store sale event today. What day would this have been? May 28th was the last one. It's probably pointless to even talk about sales other than to just particularly point out that yes, PlayStation 5s are still hard to get by, and GameStop is making these small in-store events to kind of auction them off. I don't know if they're actually auctioning them off, or if they're just giving them to people who are GameStop Pro members. Miyazaki says From Software's next game is in the final stages of development. The Elden Ring director suggested the project has been in work for 6 years. Okay, so we'll wait. We'll talk about that game when it actually has something to show. Video Games Chronicle says game developers voice support for abortion rights following the U.S. Supreme Court ruling. The industry has widely condemned the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to reverse Roe versus Wade. And it's not just Roe versus Wade. There was actually a court decision after Roe versus Wade that people forget about, that they overturned too. I'm still not 100% sure how they just came out with a ruling when there really wasn't a case even challenging it. It does seem like an overreach to say that the Supreme Court could potentially change any law whatsoever, even if it is completely unchallenged by any lower court or any court case. Taken to an extreme example, if 100% of the U.S. citizens' population all agreed with a law and nobody has brought it to a court case, and yet the Supreme Court came out against it and changed that law, that does not feel democratic by any means in that scenario. And there is just an odd problem, I think, as we become a more modernized world with better technology and faster, easier ways to communicate. The ideas of what really a democracy should be should evolve, and the ideas of having representatives for life is kind of one of the oldest concepts that should be eliminated. We should eventually get rid of congressmen and senators too, on top of lifetime appointment judges. We should we should probably have like a president for quite a long time, but I do imagine at some point there is a scenario where even a United States president becomes an outdated concept, because if we simply could just have brain chips in our brains that read each person's thought, or if we had everybody was handed a cell phone and they voted by text on every single law, that really eliminates the need for representative republic type leadership. And the arguments against that, I think, fall apart because a lot of the arguments against direct democratic rule falls apart because the idea is the law is too complicated for the average citizen to directly follow. And I think that's a circular logic, because the reason why the law is so complicated to follow is because it's been written intentionally to be complicated to follow, using Latin and such. A modernized legal laws, just a massive project to say, here, let's take every law on the books, let's either and let's put it up to a vote to simplify this law on the book into modern English, could happen, and it could happen fairly easily. Plus, there's a ton of redundant laws in existence that can be merged together. And it's mostly case history that's the problem more than actual laws. It's not like the Constitution in particular is that long. But and certainly I'm getting into a political argument here. There is an argument that, for better or worse, people deserve to rule themselves in a direct democracy, and they can actually now rule themselves in a direct democracy. And arguably, they may do a better job than senators and congressmen. They may not. It just doesn't really matter. Sometimes the right thing to do may not be the right thing for other people think. But yeah, if you're gonna have democracy, you have to put your faith in the fact that the people deserve to rule themselves. And that's really where democracy comes down, and tricks and scams and schemes to get away from the most simplistic, the purest form of a direct democracy makes your government not a direct democracy and spits in the face of the concept of a direct democracy. And maybe there is a percentage where direct democracy is going to pass laws that is going to restrict the rights of the vast majority of citizens. Inherently, if you were to sit down and say, let's make a new government now that's a direct democracy, rule 1 would be you have to follow the rules. So rule 2 is rule 1 should be like, with no exception, you have to follow the rules. And that's not even something that the U.S. government has, because the U.S. government breaks the law all the time and then says, oh, well, you can't sue the government because we have qualified immunity. But then rule 2 would be you can't kill people, and like rule 3 is you can't rob people. You'd pretty much recreate the 10 Commandments very quickly, or at least half of the 10 Commandments. But yeah, to get back to this, when this was first announced, I said I wasn't going to try and hang over this because there was just going to be a lot of companies that come out and put out statements. I do know Google has straight up said that they're going to let employees move to other states where if abortion becomes illegal in that specific state. I imagine there's a decent amount of lobbying money getting thrown around, certainly, but at the end of the day, video game companies don't have influence or power, and if they were going to try to actively instill some influence or power, I don't know how they would do that. Like, I doubt any Supreme Court justice or politician is playing games. I don't think you can ban their account or say we're not doing business with you anymore. They could stop lobbying some people, certainly, which maybe there is a bit of a come to Jesus moment here where some of these video game companies will say, oh, we actually did secretly give some money to some Republican people that were for against Roe versus Wade, and so we may very well have funded this. I imagine if you tracked donations, if you could track donations, you might find a lot of majorly successful companies have put money into the hands of people who were anti-Roe versus Wade, and now I imagine they're going to regret that. Yeah. Dirty politics, moneyed politics is a big problem. But they have very little influence, so they can't really do anything. And getting video gamers upset and riled up doesn't accomplish anything. The truth is, any company, video game company or not, if you're getting the people upset and riled up on an issue, you have to be committed to go the full route. Until somebody is willing to do a French Revolution style, let's build the guillotines, let's chop off the heads of the oligarchs and the politicians, let's start all over again. Until you're to that point, you're really not going to accomplish it unless you're at least committed to that point. You don't inherently have to do that, although very often you will. But if you're just going to half-heartedly march and protest for a couple of weeks and then forget about it, and just complain. If you're going to call your congressman and your local senator, that might help a little bit, certainly calling them. It helps certainly more than online campaigns, which they don't care about at all. Certainly voting people out, or voting the right people in can have an effect in the long term. But the fact that this was a political football issue that was just passed back and forth for decades really highlights how you really won't get a lot of change in the United States governments just by playing within the system. You have to go without the system, because the system, it sounds a little crazy to say the system is rigged, but the system is rigged. It is definitely rigged to keep people in power and keep whatever momentum had existed going forward to be the same, so you won't get real change. And arguably the real change that I would say people need isn't just the adding of a amendment in the Constitution for a Roe versus Wade type pro-choice stance. The change that needs to be made is a change away from swing politics and status quo politics, where everything is kept for the most part the same, and the same people stay in power no matter what, and there aren't big dramatic changes. Although repealing Roe versus Wade is actually a big dramatic change. But yeah, arguably you would want every new election time to bring a whole bunch of new laws happening, and at least a few amendments every session, and it doesn't happen. Maybe we don't need a whole bunch of new laws. Maybe we need to just correct the old laws, but even that doesn't happen. Nobody goes back and tries to fix them. But yeah, I think inherently the change, though, I see it definitely from an economics perspective, is we need to get money out of politics first and foremost. If politicians' only currency was individual people's votes, they would be a lot more receptive to listening to people and actually accomplishing what they promised to do, instead of corporations being in charge. So at a certain level, I am glad, and I am rambling here, and I'll move off of this topic quickly. I'm glad, though, that video game companies don't really have any power or influence. It would be a lot worse if video game companies said, we've called up the president, we've called the US president, and we've told him to put an amendment into the Constitution, and he's gonna make sure it gets done. Like a corporatocracy, or with that much influence, or an oligarch being able to do that. If the Amazon.com CEO, Jeff Bezos, if he was in a position where he could say, I've called up the president and I've caused this law to be changed, that would be terrifying, certainly, and not the direction you would want to go. So I am glad that corporations are impotent, and I kind of would just wish that they would recognize their impotence, their inability to affect things, and thus they would just focus on making video games. because this past week, as far as video game news journalism and video game development, I bet there's been a little bit less video game development happening, and there definitely has been a little bit less video game news journalism happening. These are the kinds of distractions that I personally don't like to see, because you just don't get as much accomplished. As somebody who is constantly failing or feeling like they failed because they're not accomplishing enough, the last thing I want to do is see other people not accomplishing much. Interesting how the lightning bolt there didn't actually go over this part. So the lightning bolt needs to be able to branch downward. And go. I can't summon this in the turn. Moving on, finally. Apologies. I really should have left that news article for last. Sega's the Japanese only, I believe still, new Mega Drive Mini 2 is getting a $150 controller, plus 11 more games are confirmed for the currently Japan only mini console. So this is the controller. They talked about it, but they didn't have a picture for it. And yeah, that definitely seems like a lot, the cyber stick here. It doesn't really seem that good, so I can only assume that this is a recreation of something that they actually did sell, at least maybe in Japan. It's not really a good modern flight stick type controller. The flight stick type controller here would be more ergonomic. It would have a lot more buttons on it. A throttle control probably wouldn't be connected and included. Also, it wouldn't be connected. Like, certain people's arms and shoulder widths are going to affect how well this from this feels. $150 is a ridiculous price, and definitely gets down into the realm of Japanese gimmick garbage products that are just trying to rip off the Japanese audience. Here you can even see this person holding it. If he is fairly naturally holding it by the edges here, his shoulders and elbows would be bent in quite a bit to actually ergonomically hold both the throttle and the flight stick at the same time. And you have a ton of buttons here, that some of which look like the buttons you actually would have to press at some point, others of which seem to be maybe swap indicators or turbo switches. It's also fairly crazy in comparison to know that the Mega Drive Mini 2 is going to be sold for $75, and yet the flight stick alone is $150. So I think that really highlights the ridiculous prices they're talking about. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says Ubisoft will finally reveal Skull and Bones next month, it's claimed. Skull and Bones has been an albatross around Ubisoft's neck. They should have just rushed it out after about the 5th or 6th year and just been done with it. The next Nintendo Direct will focus on third-party games, it's claimed. They expect news on Persona and a major port during the expected broadcast. It feels like June 28th, which I guess is tomorrow, will be the next Nintendo Direct. It feels like Nintendo is either embracing the idea of doing a Nintendo Direct one per month, or they're embracing the idea of putting too many Nintendo Directs back to back for the E3 era, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. There is speculation that the Metroid Prime trilogy, or at least Metroid Prime 1, will finally get ported to Switch. And so that might be the port that they're talking about finally getting released. It feels like what potentially has happened here is that Nintendo just somehow managed to make a backlog of games, and now they've painted themselves in a corner where they don't know how to get out of that backlog and actually release games. Let's see. This almost certainly won't stop this from... Yeah. Yeah, that wasn't going to stop it. A Valve developer urges players not to mod Steam Deck using larger M2 drives. This mod will significantly shorten the life of your deck. The charger IC gets very hot, and nearby thermal pads should not be moved. In addition, most M2242 M2 drives draw more power and get hotter than what the deck is designed for. I think this might be very much a case where significantly shorten the life is going to be a relative unprovable term. But at a certain point, I kind of agree with them, but at a certain point, you kind of just have to blame Valve for that too. The fact that people wanted to be able to put more space in there, the fact that somebody agreed to allow people to put more space into it, and then one designer saying, well, no, that will go outside of specifications. It very well might be a case of the designer just being very much a by the numbers person. Significantly, is 1% reduction in the life significant to a designer? Yes. Is 1% a reduction in life significant to most players? Probably no. Inherently, there is a battery inside of the Steam Deck, so I think you look at that from that perspective, and when you look at it from that perspective, you're going to only have 2 to 4 years of battery life on the Steam Deck in the first place before you're either replacing the battery, hopefully, or you're throwing away the Steam Deck for a brand new thing like you would a cell phone. Somebody who stays up with cell phones, and the price of the Steam Deck is in line with the price of a cell phone, so there is going to be a large percentage of people willing to throw away a Steam Deck for a Steam Deck 2 in 2 to 4 years, or at least a newer version of it. So if the Steam Deck is designed to last for potentially 5 years, and you take 1 year off of that but get more space, the real complaint seems to be about moving the thermal pads. inherently, I think there is probably some hysteria trying to add space to the Steam Deck prematurely. Like, people are adding coolers and space to the Steam Deck on YouTube day one instead of really playing with it and saying, well, for the games that are actually compatible and you're playing, does it actually make sense to do this? Or are you just trying to do a mod project? Because mod projects are a different thing, certainly. Most people that do mod projects make the mod and then they never use the device. Or they give away the device. Like, most hackers are having fun doing the hacking. And yes, they want their final product to actually survive and be usable, but they're not really going to use it themselves. I'm sure Valve is taking notes about how there should have been better cooling and perhaps better chip placement. The teardown of the Valve Steam Deck shows that it's kind of a mess as far as the internals. So there is definitely a case where the Valve Steam Deck 2 will have a better design. But yeah, I would recommend, if you're getting a Steam Deck, don't do any modification until you really think you need it. Moving on, Hideo Kojima says he shelved a game concept due to a similarity to The Boys. Kojima wanted Mads Mikkelsen to star in the canned project idea. But canned and shelved, I guess, mean the same thing. I've never really thought of it that way. I thought canned really meant more canceled. We're never going to do it, but I guess if it's been shelved, if it's been canned, it's probably been the same thing has been done to it. I don't see a real reason why you would not do that, though. The Boys is a dark parody on the Justice League. It's getting away fine with that as far as an Amazon Prime exclusive. It also oddly points out that Kojima didn't see that similarity and didn't have the ability or desire to contact Amazon Prime and say, hey, I want to make a game based on The Boys, why don't you just let me license, why don't we negotiate the license for that? Because it's not like there's another Boys video game that exists, or The Boys video games that exist. So yeah, he could have gone ahead and done it and nobody would have complained, if he really cared. I imagine Hideo Kojima actually has like hundreds of ideas he pitches all the time and he shelves things, and this is pretty much a pointless article. If anything, he's trying to make an argument that he thought of something like The Boys before The Boys came out, which would have been before even The Boys comic came out. And if anything, that sounds like that may just be a lie to say, oh, I thought of this great idea that would have been even better than what actually came out. Anyone can claim that, and I imagine a lot of people in Hollywood do claim things like that, that they thought of Gone with the Wind before Gone with the Wind happened. Yeah. So, but yeah, if it really was a good idea, and he had real confidence in it, he should just make the game. He shouldn't be coming to news reporters and claiming he had a great idea, but he couldn't do it because somebody else made a mediocre TV show. Like, The Boys isn't Shakespeare by any means. It's all right, it's fine, but it's not so untouchable that it can't be parodied. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Bernie Stoller, the former Sega of America president and the SCEA founder, has died at the age of 75. Stoller was instrumental in early Western success of the PlayStation, which arguably that might be why Sega kind of sucks at video games now. The modern equivalent story, we hear it and we see evidence of it quite a bit between Sony of Japan being in charge for a very long time and now Sony of California being in charge. There was a very big change, and over time it is shown that Sony of California in particular just does not care about actually publishing Japanese games as much in their purest uncensored form, at least. And so we have seen a lack of interest in the Eastern markets around the PlayStation ever since Sony of California was put in charge. So perhaps it was people like Bernie Stoller at Sega of America who pushed the Sega Genesis and the Mega Drive and the Dreamcast. Perhaps it was Sega of America that led to the success of Sega, which honestly I'm not sure Sega wasn't more successful in America than even in Japan in its early days. And now that there really isn't a Sega of America, as far as I know, I haven't heard word one of a Sega of America even existing, and now Sega of Japan is the only Sega, that's where you get things like Sonic Origins and the kind of garbage Sonic games that keep getting made with nothing else being made. Definitely that's where you start to see a lack of interest in any hardware. Although in all fairness, the Dreamcast was the thing that ruined Sega, or at least Sega feels like it ruined Sega, because there was no more consoles after the Dreamcast. And honestly, the Dreamcast compared to the PlayStation 1 at the time is a fine device. It just didn't have any games that were good. Or I would think it was more of a case that the it was more of a case of the bad Sonic games and the bad games lineup in general for the Dreamcast. Like, probably need to do a little bit more investigation to see where the real downfall of Sega came from, if there's any way to actually find that out. Because, yeah, definitely was in the Dreamcast era, but oops. Oh, I just lost. Suffice it to say, though, this is the obituary of this guy, Bernie Stoller. He oversaw the founding of Sony Computer Entertainment America, as well as serving as the president of Sega of America. So there is a Sony connection here. And here we are starting to see actual obituaries talking about his entire career instead of what we usually get when somebody dies. At 75, I guess it was more expected that this person would die, whereas a lot of people in the game industry are very loosely connected to the game industry and they die under no stated reason. His career spanned between the 1980s and until 1999. He began in the 80s as the co-founding Pacific Novelty Manufacturing Incorporated, a coin-operated company that served arcades around the state of California. He would oversee Atari Lynx before being drafted by Sony as one of the founding members. At first, the president of Sony Computer Entertainment America. Stoller was instrumental in signing the likes of Crash Bandicoot, Ridge Racer, and Spyro the Dragon to the platform. However, controversially, a he enforced a no RPG policy during his time at Sony Computer due to the genre mostly being 2D at the time and thus not showing off the power of the PlayStation. So, had he not made that mistake, PlayStation would have probably solidified, the PlayStation 1 would have solidified a much quicker lead. Following the successful first year of PlayStation, Stoller moved very quickly, so he was only there a year, to Sega of America, where he oversaw the launch of the Sega Saturn. Stoller subsequently became the Sega of America's chief operating officer in March of 1997 and president the following year. He moved up very fast. Stoller's most famous moment came when he announced the Sega Dreamcast would be priced at $199 to a standing ovation in 1999. However, it came to light that this infuriated Sega of Japan, who insisted that the console be priced at $249 in order to maximize profits. So he definitely was at odds at Sega. Yeah, I remember the story, come to think of it. And it's been a long time since I've actually had to deal with any video game history because the history kind of doesn't matter and it gets mixed in with modern drama. Prior to the console's launch in North America, Stoller was let go from Sega and received a $5 million severance package. So he definitely knew how to do business as far as getting that golden parachute. So yeah, I see him announcing it for $199 back in the day. In 1999 would have been a great move on his part personally, but also a great move for the Dreamcast. The fact seemingly seems that Sega of Japan was trying to have a puppet company, which is, it's the truth. Any Japanese company that has an American branch is trying to have a puppet company, and they expect their every single thing they say to be done to the letter, and they don't want Americans with American sensibilities or American opinions. They want little worker bees that are programmed and act as drones to do exactly what the Japanese CEOs say. And that's exactly how they run Japanese companies too. That's why it's, until maybe very recently, it's always been a nightmare to try to get anything done in Japanese companies at all. And you have to just kind of hope in a Japanese company that the current president slash CEO dies, and then that whoever that CEO is, if he was 90, he gets replaced by somebody younger who is 70 or 80, and then maybe some changes will happen, but often not even then, because the new 7 or 80-year-old CEO says we must honor the previous president's stance, and so nothing ever changes. And sometimes that works very well for the likes of like Nintendo, but it also leads to a lot of stagnation and a lack of innovation and change. Yeah, which that seems ridiculous as a side note that the Japanese are so resistant to change because it's tradition, but then they've also completely changed their actual culture and tradition at the whim of their emperors every time there was a new era. Like the modernization in particular of Japan was a major point of change, and it instilled, I think, going from Asian traditions and Asian dress to Western traditions and Western dress. I think that instilled a kind of hate for change and a love for tradition, and yet the modernization still happened. So now they have this love for a tradition that really doesn't go back 400 or 500 years ago. Not that they probably should follow every tradition from 400 or 500 years ago in Japan. It's just the it's a hypocritical uh, stance certainly to take to say something is tradition because it's been done for the past 100 years or so. Um, and that's not just Japan. There's definitely things that have only been in existence for 100 years or so in the United States, and people think that it's traditional since the day the U.S. was founded, when it really wasn't. Um, Back to the obituary, though. Uh, this quote here: I took the Sega position based on conversations with Hao Nakayama, who was the chairman of the company. Um, so he's claiming that he did what he was told to do, and that the Japanese company threw him under the bus and said that they were lying. It's very possible one person said one thing and one person said another, and there was a miscommunication. That's why you should get everything in writing. Even then, that's not usually good enough. We'd instituted and bring in a new hardware system that would do online multiplayer games. That became the Dreamcast. I headed that up. Um, Unfortunately, Nakayama got pushed out of the company by Mr. Okawa, so there was some Japanese person who was also pushed out of the company. And when he got pushed out, I got into an argument with Japan as well. I was pushed out as well. So at least that's more of an interesting video game story. I don't know if that really boils down to an obituary, and even though this is a better pre-written, I assume pre-written obituary than what we usually get, it is not. This article is really just a copy and paste from a GamesBeat article. Um, yeah, or a copy and paste of a Video Games Chronicle article in the past, when there's no real focus on his actual passing. The actual passing is just this part here, and then you could possibly add this part here, but then at this point, this should have all just been linked to a different article that says read more. Click here to read more about his experiences, his career. On a certain level, it might be fairly disgusting. It probably is fairly disgusting for somebody to die and the only thing that they be remembered for is working. Take note that in that article, um, um, there's nothing that says his family are devastated and thank you for any condolences you send, or in lieu of condolences, they ask you to donate to this charity. He will be missed. He was a beloved father, husband, nothing like that. So, I mean, it is possible he was a total jerk, but there's just no connection there. And when you look at obituaries, that often happens in video game obituaries in particular. That often happens to be the case. There's no like member of a VFW club or a member of any other kind of organization, Shriners, no member of a church, like no mention of anything he did other than his work. And probably to a certain extent, that's because any CEO, any successful president is probably a workaholic and doesn't have any much of a life outside, even when they're retired. What did he do when he left in 1999? It's 2022, so you're talking nearly 23 years there, in which he would have had to have done something. He wasn't just sitting at home watching TV, I suspect. So why is that not being talked about? At least in part. Like, did he not even have a pet he loved? You potentially, in what you leave out in obituaries, and what video game obituaries in particular leave out, paints a very, very depressing picture of some of these people. And yeah, it definitely shows that this is a great example where we should care about the person and not the video games. It is fairly disgusting here that a person is sharing, a human sentient being is sharing the spotlight with a piece of plastic toy. That the implication is that they are on the same level. This person who had a long life and probably accomplished a lot of things is on the same level as a plastic toy. Yeah, that's a bad statement visually to say, at the very least. Even if that wasn't the intention, that is the message that can be taken from that. And at a certain level, if that's the best video game journalists can do, because video game journalists are not real journalists, then they probably shouldn't bother to even write articles in the first place. Like, they probably should be really short articles. Alright, I think we've got that. Wow, it's been 2 hours already and we haven't gotten anywhere. I was not expecting so much to talk about this Monday. Right. Let's see. Moving on, the Skull and Bones has been rated by the ESRB, so we are getting more evidence that Skull and Bones is coming out from Video Games Chronicles. Let's see. Miyamoto initially, quote, cringed at Wind Waker's art style and asked for a redesign. It's been claimed the dev team initially kept the art style from Miyamoto, the new translation claims. I could see why they would keep the art style hidden, but that's the wrong response. They really should have discussed the idea and said, hey, we want to do a different art style because this game is going to be set in a different timeline and with different hardware, and it's just not going to look good otherwise. I don't blame for a second if Miyamoto cringed at the Wind Waker art style because yeah, it is pretty rough compared to the Zelda games that before that, compared to Ocarina of Time, which is what it definitely would have been compared to more than anything else. But in all fairness, the Wind Waker art style does look better than Ocarina of Time. It just does. It has smoother edges and more polygons. It's not, I think, as good of a game, and the art style implies that it's much more kid-friendly of a game than previous Zelda games, which had been more teen-leaning. A Wind Waker feels like it is definitely more for little kids. Um, but yeah, I definitely can see the complaints there. But I don't think they had much of a difference there. I'm noticing on the chat, Eon says, "Hey, want a duel? How's your day?" I'm sorry I haven't gotten back to you and been paying attention to that. As far as do I want a duel, I don't have time for it. I'm falling behind like crazy today. How's my day going? It's fine, but I am falling behind. So that is a pretty typical day for me. One way or the other. Apologies that I can't duel you today, but we have the whole Steam summer sale and just a ton of news. I never really know what to say when somebody says how's your day, because my day as a YouTuber and just the situation I'm in is just so weird compared to other people's days. Like, I'm not going to an office, I'm not talking to people, I'm not hanging around a water cooler, I'm not having a commute, I'm not having to deal with the weather. So my days are fairly consistent, maybe slightly worse than average just because of insomnia and just not being as healthy as I'd like to be, but they're not terrible. Like, I definitely have been in other situations in my life where every single day was a nightmare, every single day was a new thing to make me miserable, and a lot of that probably had to do with water cooler talk and dealing with people, and commuting and weather, things that outside of my control. But right now I pretty much control as much as I can, and as being able to control as much as you can, it leaves you to having a fairly consistent, decent experience. And it's always a shame for anybody that you don't have great days. I don't ever get to win the lottery or in some other way have big surprises of success. But yeah, like the most successful thing that can happen to me day to day is that I'll get a lot of views on a bunch of videos or a lot of subscribers. There's an infinite possibility of how many views or how many subscribers I could get, but that's about it. Where there is kind of a floor of how bad your day can do, because at a certain point your day can always get worse until you die, but then once you kick the bucket, your bad day ends. So there's a not quite an infinite amount of misery or terrible things that can happen to any one person. Which, in a certain way, that you can definitely look at that as an optimistic thing, that there's way more opportunity for good things to happen than bad things. Moving on back to video game news instead of just pointlessly rambling. July's PlayStation Plus Essential Games have been revealed. Crash Bandicoot 4 and Man of Medan are among next month's free games. Man of Medan was one of the earlier Dark Pictures anthology games. Arcadegeddon is also included. Summer Games Done Quick 2022 is returning to in-person today. The show will feature Yakuza Like a Dragon being completed in less than 4 hours. The Games Done Quick events will be better, in my opinion, with live presentations. I think, though, there is definitely a realization that a lot of people are going to have to recognize, whether they want to or not, that they've run out of games, new games to do speed runs for, and it's boiling down to just doing the same games over and over again. Let's see, can you max C, max C? Let's see what happens here. I think you can Ash Blossom max C. But yeah, there are some slight annoyances in that Games Done Quick has gone a little extreme with its wokeness. They had that whole femme fatales block that that they were doing, and that really never went anywhere. I don't know if they're even still doing that. They're putting pronouns for every character, every presenter and player, and voice overview, which seems just kind of ridiculous because I have yet to see more than 2 people that had more than the heteronormative pronouns in use. But yeah, I would say it's 98% the problem with the Games Done Quick now is that it is that they have run out of games, and 2% it's that they've gone corporate in a lot of ways, more than even they've gone woke. And that was the complaint that I've heard before, is that in the first couple of Games Done Quick events, you were very much capable of making jokes and making dirty jokes and just being a little bit blue and off color while sitting on the couch with your friends, and it really did feel like a group of friends sitting around and having fun, and the audience was getting to look in and be part of that group of friends sitting around and having fun. And more there's like stupid rules and regulations to make it go, make it more of a money-making event, which the Games Done Quick really is too much of a corporate event now, when it really shouldn't be. Yeah, effectively it's lost its street cred. I don't know if you could get that back either. If you were to try to make a new Games Done Quick type experience, yeah, I don't know if that would actually happen. And boy, do you have to play a lot of cards in this deck. But it wins, so I can't complain. $1,700. It is also very possible, I suppose, that I personally have just worked my way away from caring about the Games Done Quick games. In part, when they play a new game, I don't want to watch it because I don't want to spoil myself on the new game, and there just aren't any old games that I haven't seen at least 2 or 3 speedruns on. So I may have just grown out of it myself. The points at which they release and have these events also are perhaps at the wrong time during the year when you're fairly busy watching other video game stuff. Like, there really should be a Games Done Quick around January when there's no video game news happening at all. Despite my own feelings, I will say that this Summer Games Quick is taking place in Bloomington, Minnesota. It will benefit Doctors Without Borders, which is a fine charity, I would assume, or I would say. It's gonna include Elden Ring, Control, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond, and Shining Pearl. Yeah. Elden Ring would be about the one I could watch there, because I'm never going to play Elden Ring. I could see potentially sitting through Control, but Control's going to be boring. And same is true for Pokemon Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. It's a little surprising that you'd have a Nintendo game at all, for as copyright claiming as Nintendo is, but maybe they got permission. This is a weird story. John Cena reportedly urged Nintendo to make a new 2D Metroid game in 2017. Cena, quote, loved Metroid Dread, it's claimed. Which, yeah, this is according to Dan Reichert, who formerly worked with the WWE. I imagine something was said and then it was never passed up any chain at all. That John Cena talked to some translator or some PR person when being shown video games, because they do show video games to wrestlers, and wrestlers are into gaming more than you would think. It kind of makes sense though. Wrestlers are on the road a lot in hotels, so either they get into gaming or they get into going to bars and drinking and or drugs or something like that, or prostitution. And definitely I think the WWE is trying to discourage everything except for gaming. So yeah, does that make a lot of sense that Nintendo should listen to John Cena to make a new 2D Metroid game? The message effectively is that should be from anybody with any influence at all to Nintendo is to make more Metroid games in general. Like, they should make 2D games, they should make 3D games, they should go in every possible direction to make as many possible Metroid licenses, assuming they can do it well. Inherently, Nintendo never cared for or understood Metroid, the Metroid series, and they still don't care for or understand it, and they just hand it to third-party people who will try their best to make something happen, but can only go so far. Okay. Do we want to stay here? Or do we want to activate this? I think we'll stay here and just see what happens. Cap is on the chat and he says hi. Hi. Yeah. I don't really think there's a story here to talk about, really. Sure, if if John Cena is kind of a gamer, which here's some pictures that definitely says he is pushed into that. I don't know how much of John Cena's whole personality isn't just being handed to him by a PR person. Um, like, these wrestlers can't be gaming that much. They've got to work out. They've got to maintain that body muscle. John Cena tries to be in movies too. Like, he's definitely stopped trying to make himself be a kid favorite and a fan favorite, and trying to now be more of an actor character, a comedic actor, because he's probably a little too old to actually be doing wrestling anymore. But yeah, it really is a dumb story to even talk about, to say John Cena, a person of no known expertise in video games, urged Nintendo to make a new 2D Metroid game in 2017. The implication is that they listened to him and made Metroid Dread, which almost certainly that was not their influence. There was no influence there at all. Like, this is effectively not news. But yeah, that would be the right way to describe it, as not news. Oh, this takes way too long. Wish I could draw a box around things. That would save some time. Ah, well, that stopped the trap from happening. It's gonna try and banish my cards. That's not gonna work. Set this here. Summon this here. 2,000 plus 3,000 is enough to win. 1, 2, 3, 4. Summon my other card. Activate this effect. No, this time. There we go. Video Games Chronicles. We still have about 5 articles here. The Atari brand is 50 years old today. The original US company was one of the early pioneers in the video game industry. Of course, the original Atari has long since been gone and dead. So the new Atari is really just a holding company and a scam company more than anything else. Or at least it is a pale echo of what the original Atari was. Atari is kind of a great example that being first to market doesn't guarantee success, or being one of the first to market doesn't guarantee success. The Atari is one of these first generation game companies that did not have a Nintendo seal of quality or seal of approval, and a ton of terrible Atari games were licensed and allowed to be made, and it destroyed the Atari consoles and the Atari name. Let's see. Moving on, Cyberpunk's 2077's external QA team allegedly misled CD Projekt over its experience. Confidential documents are claimed to show what went wrong during the QA process. I don't know what that really means, though. New report has alleged that the outsourced QA team behind Cyberpunk 2077 misled the developer CD Projekt about the experience and size of its team working on the game. Upper Echelon Games claims they received confidential documents from an employee in Romania based Quantic Labs, the external QA team behind Cyberpunk 27, detailing what went wrong during the QA process. It claims it has a 72-page QA test file. CD Projekt Red says they don't comment on rumors. So, as best as I can understand here, what the claim is that the QA testers the QA testing company was claiming it was employing a lot more people or having a lot more people work a lot more hours to do QA testing when it really wasn't. Now, at a certain point, that's CD Projekt Red's own mistake. If they are, because they would need a certain number of bugs to be documented and reported, and if they're coming back and saying we found 900 bugs in this past week that we've reported and documented, and we're sending you all the video footage, really it should be video footage of these bugs, that it's pretty hard for CD Projekt Red to not realize, oh, well, they sent us 900 bugs, but they should have been sending us 1,000 bugs for the amount of staff that we're paying for. At a certain point, outsourcing is potentially always has that danger of people lying about how many people are actually being employed. Yeah. If you were paying for 2,000 seats for customer service in India, I wouldn't be surprised if you're really only getting like 1,800 seats, in the sense that there would be 1,800 employees and that they were charging for 2,000 and pocketing the difference. But you have to make sure you trust who you're doing business with, always. And so this is kind of a non-story because it doesn't, I don't think in any way it doesn't let people forgive CD Projekt Red and say, oh, it was the QA department's fault. In fact, that's a pretty nasty attempt even in the story to say it's the QA team's fault that CD Projekt Red was so bad, because somebody at CD Projekt Red should have had to have seen a should have had to have seen a final version of the game. They should have done some in-house testing for quality assistance. Cap is on the chat. He says, hello, can I play with you? Do you play with viewers? I saw you say hi earlier. I respond in the chat if you in the video with a 30-second delay if you had read the pinned comment. Can you play with me? No, I've already said I'm too busy today to play with someone else. I'm not going to change that for today because that would be incredibly unfair. Do I play with viewers? Sometimes, yes. Today, no. Like, that's the best answer I can give. Yeah. At the end of the day, at least one person needed to have played the Gold Master version of Cyberpunk 2077 in-house at CD Projekt Red, if not a lot of people. And if they didn't run their business that way, it's still CD Projekt Red's fault that the game came out badly. Like, you can claim you got conned all you want, and we may see a lawsuit down the line to that end, that the third party out of house QA team conned them. But at a certain point, if you bent over backwards to allow somebody to con you, you bear the blame. Like, you have to do due diligence when you do business with anybody. And if you're not willing to due diligence, then you get what you ask for. Like, this is really one of those cases where you can blame the victim to a certain extent, because if the victim is not doing what is industry standard appropriate, then those kinds of businesses deserve to fail, and they deserve to get conned. As crazy as that might sound. Right now would be a terrible time to break my stride, by the way, playing viewers, because I am actually on a bit of a win streak now that I've gotten back to playing ranked instead of doing this stupid festival, and I am working my way towards platinum. Let's see if this effect... Yeah, that's not gonna do much. And I can't summon this. Alright, well, good enough. $200 direct attack. It's not a lot by any means. How in the world could I have summoned that? Well, that was a mistake. If I had known I could have summoned that, if I had checked, I could have done a lot more damage. Yep, three more Video Games Chronicle articles for today. Apparently it's been confirmed that a Nintendo Direct, quote, partner showcase will take place tomorrow. The latest presentation will focus mainly on third-party games. Yep. 6 a.m. Pacific Time, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. I wouldn't be surprised if it is heavily focused on things like Xenoblade Chronicles and 1 or 2 third-party games. Fall Guys update fixes the PS5 party problem, Switch visual issues, and a voice chat bug. So good to know about that. Check out the article if you're more interested. Ubisoft has actually confirmed plans to attend Gamescom 2022. The publisher was noticeably absent from this month's Summer Games Fest. Interestingly, though, pretty much every other major publisher is not going to Gamescom, so Gamescom may just be Ubisoft's this year. There probably will be some indie games too. I wouldn't be surprised if the best way to do this would have been to have Summer Games Fest happen a week later than it did, because Summer Games Fest was pretty lackluster anyways, and then just habitually having a Summer Games Fest extended a month later. Yeah, summer month and a half later, basically, to catch anybody that has just missed that launch date. In a lot of ways, the Summer Games Fest probably should just boil down to, we're going to have a kind of fancy event every quarter, if not every month. Yeah, every quarter probably makes a little bit more sense. That would give people time to potentially cancel showing up at one Summer Games Fest and not having to wait an entire year for the next presentation or have a different presentation. I don't know what Ubisoft, though, is even planning on announcing other than the Skull and Bones game. And so maybe they definitely thought that since Skull and Bones is the only thing they have to show, now would be a good time to try and own the narrative and own the story around Skull and Bones being announced during Gamescom, instead of having to compete with other games happening during E3. Alright. That's about as good as we can do. And then our last Video Games Chronicles article, Metroid Prime Switch Remaster will finally release this year, it's claimed. The original game is said to be getting a big remaster treatment. This is from Jeff Grubb of Giant Bomb, which I haven't been watching Giant Bomb in the past couple of weeks, and I'm just kind of happier for it. I may get to catch the Bombcast, but I may not. It's strange, though, that only one game is getting the remaster, when really I was thinking that the entire trilogy was going to, at this point, have a remastered bundled version. I mean, if we finally get Metroid Prime 1 out, are we gonna have to wait another 10 years for a remaster of Metroid Prime 2? Or is the remaster... I mean, it's just a remaster, it's not a remake, so it's not like they're gonna put the events of 2 and 3 together. Maybe 2 and 3 are already done, or maybe it will be... Nintendo is hoping that it will be very trivial to just copy the files over from 2 and 3. I wouldn't be surprised if 2 and 3 all run on the exact same engine. I'd like to see it come out. It does create an interesting point for me. I have a Nintendo Switch now. I don't really have time to play a Nintendo Switch, but I kind of would like to go back and play Metroid Prime. It was a much easier decision to not get like Mario 64 and play that again, because yeah, I've done that and I don't really feel like there's a need to do that. Plus this would be a remaster, whereas that the Mario game, Mario 64, Mario Galaxy, Mario Sunshine, those are really just ports. And even in that trilogy, you only get Mario Galaxy 1, you don't get Mario Galaxy 2, which would be the one Mario game I haven't played. But yeah, I can see a remaster convincing me to play it. I was probably going to need to get Metroid Dread. I probably am going to just have to buy 2 or 3 Nintendo Switch games to justify owning a Nintendo Switch and playing them. Alright, well, let's go through some of the games that came out on Steam real quickly, because we can burn through that. We have a game here called Vacuum Story, which is showing the top-down perspective of a Roomba that is very poorly animated. It needs more details. It needs to go kind of sci-fi and have markers. Obviously, though, this is just a low-effort game. I imagine because of the Steam Summer Sale, we'll see slightly more low-effort games come out. Surrounded is a low-polygon survival game. And now that I have the new RAM installed, this is where I need to enable that plugin I was using to make sure all of these are preloaded, so we don't have screenshots not loaded, because that's a pain. Surrounded's no interest. Ilum here. Looks like you play as an Egyptian god and then run around and smash a bunch of stuff. Open world game, Ancient Babylonian. Hmm. Hmm. I want this potentially to be a good game. I suspect it isn't. Fortunately, we do have the follow list to find out, so we'll just put this on the follow list. I definitely want a Babylonian slash ancient Egyptian type game. Armored Battalion as a game. It's not that interesting. We have something called Project Name, which is just a mixed reviewed either dropper or parkour platformer game. Yeah, he destroyed my cards, so I'm dead here. Here we have a game called Wreck the Fed, which is a top-down shooter. Probably not the right way to wreck the Fed. And doesn't look like anything of interest. Here we have Jesus' Sacred Heart. Let's see. It seems to be Catholic trivia or joke trivia. Yeah. Or maybe it's not Catholicism. Maybe it's something else. The idea of Jesus' Sacred Heart as a concept is not something I even know anything about. It's I think an allegory more than a reality. I don't think that there is some kind of Sacred Heart artifact that claims to be Jesus's, because that wouldn't really make a lot of sense if you believe Jesus resurrected and is still alive today or went up to heaven. How could anybody get his heart as an actual artifact? This does just seem to be a trivia game around religion, which it's tough, certainly, to make a trivia game in the first place, but one around religion where people are not in agreement with aspects of the different variations and sects of Christianity is going to make it even more difficult for a game like that to succeed. Just looking at like the King James Version versus the New International Version, the words used and the way things are said are fairly different, so having a trivia game would have to be around some very basic concepts. And religious video games have never succeeded in any religion at all. Like, I just don't think people want entertainment around religion. At a certain point, religion is taken seriously, where video games are the opposite of being taken seriously. So you have an underlying conflict in that. We don't even really have a lot of religious characters in video games, where it would kind of make more sense. If the Doom guy from Doom was highly religious, and that was a foundation as to why he was shooting all the hellspawn, that would kind of make sense. If more of the characters from Wolfenstein, the Wolfenstein series, were Jewish, and that would certainly make a lot more sense too. But they just don't want to touch on those aspects. It's not good business. It's provoking controversy. Anytime they did do something like that, such as in Far Cry 4, where the main bad guy is the leader of a religious cult, well, the more left-leaning people were upset that they humanized the cult leader and didn't have him be a mustache-twirling bad guy. And the right-wing people around Fallout 4 really didn't care one bit, because it was just showing a fictional cult in a fictional world, and they had things they were more interested in focusing on. Let's see. That's not gonna quite get me far enough. Okay, can't do anything in the turn. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Corleone Online. This looks like this is a massive multiplayer MMORPG 2D game. It doesn't look polished enough for what it is, and I think the chibi tiny little icons here, these small icons here, probably wouldn't help that type of game. Top-down shooter MMORPG is weird. Rocket Drift here is effectively just a more polished version of Flappy Bird. Nothing there of interest. Here we have a game called Everything is for Humanity, which looks like it is a horror game. It looks polished enough to deserve a follow. That it's consistently always been a problem that there's there's too much polish showing up around horror games, and so we've gotten some horror games that look very good but inherently aren't as good as you would think they were, which is in part why I have to use the follow list, and I have to try my very best to try my very best to make sure I'm looking at reviews more than I'm looking at the visuals of games, to make sure that they actually are games and that they aren't just very pretty screensavers you walk through. What is interesting about this horror game as the video is playing is that they are using their watch as a flashlight. So many horror games you have this old-fashioned flashlight, when, yeah, in modern times nobody carries flashlights around, not unless you're camping or an emergency has happened. You turn on the flashlight feature on your cell phone, or you turn on a watch for a flashlight. I think the watch is a mistake, really. There really should just be more people using their phones as a flashlight. But then I guess if you have a phone, you probably could call for help. Next we have a game on Steam here called Brutal Japan, which, if this was an old game, I almost would say maybe there's some relevancy to this, but I don't think that's really the case. I'm gonna give this a follow, even though it's already mixed. Yeah, no, I'm not, actually. This one, if it's mixed already, I don't think there's something to it. Plus, if this is a brand new game, which it seems like it is because it's early access, it's just released, then there's not a lot of chance of it being relevant. Next we have The Cruel Dreamer Marcosius, which, visually it doesn't look quite polished enough. Looks a little too low polygonal. Looks like it might just be asset flipping a little bit. Not a single screenshot here looks quite good enough. Here we have another Chinese mobile game being ported. I heard a rumor, and that's pretty much all I can say, is that I heard a rumor that NetEase, who was working with Activision Blizzard for Diablo Immortal, may have been banned from getting any game approved at all for 3 years because some Western employee in Activision Blizzard had access to the Weibo Japanese chat service account and then insulted the Chinese president. So yeah, at some point it might have very well been a case where it was intentional that they were trying to either screw over NetEase, Activision Blizzard was, or that they were trying to screw over the launch of Diablo Immortal because they knew it was going to get banned for the microtransactions. But if it was intentional, they're effectively burning what they claim would have been millions of dollars in microtransactions because of this. Because Diablo Immortal is at least being delayed. It would be somewhat unfair, but the Chinese government is not known for being fair, for NetEase, who publishes a lot of games on behalf of a lot of foreign companies, which are forced to do business with Chinese companies to publish anything inside of China by law. It would be unfair to punish NetEase for something NetEase really had no involvement in at all. For 3 years, that effectively kills their business or severely hampers it. And at a certain level, that I think really does just point back to how much the Chinese government is willing to do, how far they're willing to go as far as ruining a brand new video game, or only starting very recently to grow a video game industry in their company just to enforce censorship laws. And yeah, it's totally believable that that's what's going to happen. I constantly, when I have to talk about Chinese, the industry as far as video games in China, there's just no way that Western people can do business with China as far as video games, really, as far as most industries. And that's why we see so many of these Chinese mobile games being ported to Steam without even being translated, is because these are games that are probably not approved for sale in China, and they are just expecting Chinese people to VPN outside the Great Firewall of China to buy these games on a non-Chinese version of Steam, because there is a Chinese version of Steam that barely has any games on it. I think it's maybe 100 games at most. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is getting taste of these awful Chinese mobile games that are all about the exact same concepts of traditional Chinese stories, and are all usually full of microtransactions and just bad gameplay mechanics and are boring. Let's see. So we'll just destroy all 4 of his cards. So he's trying really hard to not destroy those 2 cards, which must be part of his strategy. Let's look at the Gematsu articles. From Software says an unannounced title in the final stages of development. Next title is directed by Hidetaka Miyazaki, is underway. They're hiring for several new projects, which this is really not news when you're not saying anything of substance. It's like, yes, we're hiring. Some so many video game companies. I'm surprised video game companies don't just claim that they're always hiring, really. Like, you should just always be hiring and collecting resumes, and then just not call anybody in for an interview until you actually have a position. Now, arguably, that might make a HR team's job a bit of a nightmare because if you are pretending like you have jobs when you don't have jobs, people might call you and say, "Hey, when can I get an interview? I'm available this time, and this time." But yeah, a lot of companies do that. It's not a terrible system to take people's resumes, particularly if they're offering it. You always take a resume and then maybe throw it away after they leave the room. But the last thing you want to do in a business is to be trapped with an awful employee that you cannot replace. I think a lot of employers and businesses are in that situation, though, where they get trapped with employees that they think are awful, whether they are awful or not, and then they were just too lazy to interview or replace them. This effect won't work, apparently. Let's see. Moving on, Story of Seasons, Pioneers of Olive Town for the PS4 launches July 26th in North America and July 29th in Europe, according to Gamatsu. We don't have that many Gamatsu articles. The romance visual novel DC4 De Capo 4 Fortunate Departures is coming to PS4 and Switch in October of Japan. Melty Blood Type Lumina adds 2 new DLC characters this summer to this winter, so they've announced that they will add 4 new characters, but not actually telling you what those 4 characters are. Should have probably activated this. Yeah, I totally should have activated this. Yeah, let's activate it now. See how that works. Gamatsu has the weekly Japanese game releases. Let's see. Dueled, Pocket Planet, DNF Duel, Eve Ghost Enemies, Monster Hunter Rise, Sunbreak, Saikyo, Shooting Stars Alpha, Rabbids Party of Legends. Apparently this is a Rabbids game from Ubisoft with no advertisement around it, unless that's not Ubisoft. And then Void Terrarium 2, and then Young Souls 2. Yeah, Rabbids Party of Legend. Wow. It's a party game developed by Ubisoft Chengdu. First I've even heard of it. Demon Slayer. Let's come over here and play. Discard that. Deck to hand. 2, 3, 3, 4. And that didn't work. Which means I've pretty much lost. Let's see. Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yabai, the Hino Kami Chronicles DLC character Tengu Uzui, Tengen Uzui trailer and screenshots are now available. This is maybe their first DLC character, because it's been a while since they've been talking about new characters for Demon Slayer. A side-scrolling fantasy RPG called Worthlife for Switch launches July 14th in the West. And this is an interesting cast of characters and a slightly different art style. We want to end the game. We don't want to just surrender by not playing, because we'll get more rewards if we actually end. As far as Worthlife, screenshots here. There could be something to this. But it also could be very much nothing. It seems oddly zoomed in, almost like it would be a mobile game. And then those last two screenshots almost show a bullet hell shooter type platforming game. Very different type of experience. If we look through the blurred trailer, does seem oddly zoomed in. It seems to be fairly text-based. But then there is a little bit of platforming and fighting, but maybe not as much as you'd expect. Gamatsu says a Nintendo Direct Mini Partner Showcase is set for tomorrow. We already knew about that. And then 505 Games has acquired D3 Go. The Italian publisher has taken full ownership of the Puzzle Quest series, which maybe makes a great argument to not buy the Puzzle Quest series of games anytime soon, even if they're on sale, because maybe they'll put out a remaster and make them cheaper, or maybe they'll do nothing. You never really know. Back to games here, we have Hidden Treasures of the Forest of Dreams, which it's a little too much fuzzy pastels. That was one of the things that was weird about Myst 4 too, is that there definitely were points where the screen was just going blurry because of an effect that they were doing. They were doing a lot of early visualization effects, and so the entire screen would just go a little bit blurry, and I'm thinking my eyes are messing up potentially when they really aren't. I should have gone in the opposite direction, because look, if I had done this and brought this, and this will probably be the last game we play today. If I had done this, I could probably have activated this effect to then destroy this card, which is affecting effects. But see, yeah, I've lost. Yeah, this game is nothing. Seraphina and the Keen Egg. Looks like one of these RPG games that's been censored. Almost certainly this large coat showed at least a little bit more cleavage. We're not seeing any kind of DLC bundle here. More and more we see games like this that definitely feel like there is a different version of this game where you would have more cleavage showing. At the very least, and it's just been censored. But otherwise, it doesn't look like a good game, so it's still no. Here we have a game called Fade Out Underground. which seem to play as bunnies. I'm going to put this on the fall list, but this is probably a no too. It looks like it's more of an MMO online PvP. Yeah, it is, so it doesn't need to be on the fall list because it's an online game and I don't play online games. Here we have a match 3 Chinese game. It actually doesn't look that bad, really, but possible to play if it doesn't support English. No reason to be a video game critic on a game you can't even understand. Although arguably maybe there is quite a few video game critics out there that don't understand the video games they're playing. Alright, so as far as all of the ranked victories that had piled up because of the festival, those are all done. And in an effort to save time, I'm just going to click claim all rewards. We have another login. We have another spectate I need to do. And then the lifetime one is the one of interest. Activating another spell cards for 50. Special summoning some more characters for 50. That seems to be it. So that gets us up to 7,500 crystals out of a maximum of 10,000, although you can still have more on top of that. We're still in a pretty good position. Because we were playing ranked, going up in levels happened quite a bit, but we are now past 50 level 50, so the amount of rewards maybe are better, but you don't get as much. And we are slowly working our way, getting crafting points and gems. Small amounts of crafting points and gems. Alright, let's burn through these games fairly quickly. We have a game here called The Rabbit Scroll. We may very well not find any game that I want to put on my YouTube Shorts, which that's fine. I'm a little bit ahead anyways. I feel like that's going to be an issue. Babysitter Simulator. I kind of inherently don't think kids should be babysitters at all. Once you get to be maybe 16, 17, or 18, it makes sense, but I don't think even kids at that point should have the ambition to be babysitters, because it's sadly it's just not a real career path. There probably should be a career out of this. I do want to see kids games, so I am going to put this on the follow list, but yeah, there's just like a lot of mistakes you can make being a child carer, and some of those mistakes you can't take back. The idea of being a babysitter is also like underpaying people to do some of the hardest work you could possibly do. Basco Simulator, whatever that is, looks like it's just a low effort joke game. This looks like a point and click adventure or visual novel from China. Yeah, it does not look particularly good as far as the imagery and the inconsistency of a real photograph and a fake animated person. This is just a terrible Wolfenstein clone, so no to that. Car Destroyer. We definitely could, in the United States and other places, create an industry around childcare and actually have to have licensed childcare people who have certifications and accreditations, and that would be an industry that really couldn't be replaced with robots very easily, but that's not what happens. The people that need childcare for the most part are too broke to pay for good childcare, and that's why we have public schools, and even public schools are horribly underfunded, and the employees all the schools are horribly trained and qualified for what they really should be. And at a certain point, it might just be better to have artificial intelligence and robots run schools and do childcare. Me Alone reissue. I don't know what reissue means. If it's a case that this game has been listed on Steam before and then removed. Um, Obviously, though, this is just a kind of asset flip zombie shooter. Doesn't look as bad as some of the other asset flip zombie shooters, but it's still really nothing. Psycholance doesn't look like anything I want to play. It looks like it's a Pong game. Very blurry. This does seem like this is going to be the weekend where we don't get any adult games, because I would have seen that by now. I would have seen some anime visual novel with anime girls. So Steam does seem to be getting back to its pattern of only allowing adult games to come out over the weekend, every other weekend, to effectively put its thumbs on the scales. This game doesn't look interesting, and get fewer people to actually see that the games, if they even come out. Bug Butcher doesn't look good either. All these games are pretty bad. It's not uncommon, though, when there's a summer sale for really bad games to come out. Nobody is going to launch a brand new game around the summer sale if they can avoid it. Chickweed doesn't look interesting either. On top of Valve and Steam seeming to limit the release windows of adult games, they seem to also be releasing considerably fewer adult games also. Like we're seeing two every 2 weeks, when we should be seeing closer to probably 10 every 2 weeks. Let's see. So many of these games that there's really not even anything to say. They're really bottom of the barrel stuff. I wonder if, I haven't been looking at the publisher, I wonder if we're having maybe 2 or 3 people flood the marketplace with low effort games. I mean, it really doesn't matter if it's 100 separate entities flooding the market or one person flooding the market with 100 games, though. The outcome is the same. You end up with a bunch of really, really bad games. I have yet to see one even worth mentioning for more than a second. Epic Jump here has a different art style, certainly on the idea of asset flipping and platforming, doing it on a side scrolling, but you can even see in the playthrough the poses and the rigging is very bad, and the jumping does not look natural. Certainly if you're going to do parkour and jumping, you have to either be in first person perspective so you don't have to animate and rig the characters when they're jumping, or you have to put a lot of effort and a lot of polish into the way the characters look when they do jump. Oh man, this is terrible, but it's also kind of great because I needed to hurry up anyways. We've gone 3 hours. Odd one out here. Oddly does look like a puzzle game that might be worth playing, so I'm going to put that on the follow list. But it's not a very visually appealing game. And at a certain point, if I am going to do the YouTube shorts, I probably want something that is a little bit more visually appealing than just a puzzle game that might be okay. Lost Boy, Lost Island doesn't have enough polish. Yeah, I may very quickly find myself screwed over as far as games to spotlight, and may skip some days on spotlighting. Here we have another Chinese game. This time it looks like it's a card game, but it does not really look good. So we only have like 4 more games to even look at. Hangout game. It's reminiscent of an old platformer, but it really is a brand new game and has some dark screenshot syndrome problems. Yeah, that's still going to be a no. I don't even feel like I'm being picky here. And we just really have been seeing some awful games. This Bogdan's Heart Quest, the Invader Slayer, might be something, so I'll give it a follow. I also had a very hard time today setting up my macro to launch the Steam follow list cleanup. It kept breaking, and I don't know why. Eventually, I just ran it and reran it and reran it, and it worked. And I'm like, oh, well, what in the world just happened there? That happened. I guess inherently, since I know where it was breaking, I should just try to put a wait command in front of it and just tell it to move a little bit slower. I guess that would be the way to fix this. And see, we're already at the GameDeveloper.com articles. We're already talking about Bungie filing the 7.6 million lawsuit against the fake DMC takedowns. Or the fake DMC takedowner. We already talked about game developers and publishers issuing statements supporting abortion rights. It would be interesting if there was even a single company that came out as an exception, but I don't see any reason why people would come out like anti-Roe versus Wade and say anything when it's just been overturned. That seems to be just gloating at that point. Although I definitely have heard stories of Christian churches, their first Sunday after Roe versus Wade being turned around, very much gloating, which inherently means those pastors and those churches had a sermon already in the pocket, because the announcement happened on Friday, and preachers don't write their sermons over the course of a Friday evening, Saturday, and then Sunday morning. They are usually writing their sermons over the entire week while doing other things, and usually they're teaching on a general theme in a series. Of course, that's assuming that they made a whole sermon about it and didn't just do a short prayer, which they could do to say, thank God for overturning Roe versus Wade, or whatever they would say. Of course, I'm sure that alienates some percentage of your church base in almost any church, and churches are getting sparser and sparser every year because younger people are becoming less and less religious, or leaning on religion less and less, or less and less Christian at least. Moving on, Fall Guys has hit 20 million players after the free-to-play relaunch, which I guess that's a big number. Like, I don't think there's anything to complain about as far as 20 million free-to-play players. Of course, 20 million free-to-play players is in no way equivalent or comparable to even a million pay players that actually would have had to pay just to play the game in the first place. Miniclip has acquired Subway Surfers developer Cybo, which half of the time we get these GameDevelopers.com articles, it's like unknown company you've never heard of has acquired another developer company you've never heard of. Very small acquisitions, but the small acquisitions, I assume, eventually encourage or lead to bigger acquisitions. Football Manager 2022 hits 1 million in sales on PC and Mac, which is maybe a big number for a niche game like a football management game, which probably means soccer management. But I also wouldn't be surprised if that number is actually fairly small. And then they also have an obituary for the former Sega of America president, Bernie Stoller. This article is fairly similar to the previous article, but it is giving some different information. During his time at Sega, Solar led development of Dreamcast and acquired Visual Concepts, which eventually sold to Take-Two Interactive and used to be the publisher to create the 2K label. Later on, Stoller became an advisor and director at in-game advertising company Adscape Media, which he would later be purchased by Google. Google then brought Stoller on board as its own games evangelist, helping the influential figure add to his already extensive resume. Those that know Stoller have been paying tribute on social media after hearing news of his passing. So, slightly better article as far as an obituary on GameDeveloper.com compared to Video Games Chronicle, which was very much not an obituary article at all after the first two chapters. Although still, my point stands. You get maybe 2 sentences about the man and the person, and then the rest of it is more about what he did in his work. So maybe 2 sentences of non-work, and then 4 to 5 sentences about his work. And then our final article here, I don't know why these images aren't loading. A Valve designer warns against expanding the Steam Deck storage with a larger NVMe SSDs. It obviously has been designed that you can put in one that is the same physical size, but trying to squeeze in a larger physical size is what the mod was that they're complaining against. So you have to kind of be careful and actually read the article because it's not just a outright saying don't upgrade the storage space. It's saying upgrade the storage space with the same physical size memory card. Okay. Now we have our fall list games to consider. This is a VR game based around the Spice and Wolf anime game. Does it support English? It says it does. No, it's not. Spice and Wolf is not an anime game. It is an anime TV show. It's a pretty old one too, so the relevancy around this would be not much, but I suppose if I decided at some point to get into VR, I probably would have slim pickings, so I would probably want to check that out. So that stays on the follow list. Next we have an adult game, and I'll just not show that because that's almost certainly not going to be YouTube family friendly. I'll just deal with that one later. Then we have a real-time strategy game called Spellforce Soul Harvest. Spellforce 3 Soul Harvest. It's rated positively. It deserves to be on the wish list. I'm not sure I'm particularly in the mood to play an RPG/RTS game, but particularly in a fantasy world, but I might be at some point in the future. Whereas Spellforce 3 Reforced is an older game. So there's 3 Spellforce games, and even though this is barely over the 74%, I guess we just put it on the wish list so we understand that there are 3 Spellforce games. I got 2 of them. Here's another adult game called Spellcasting Collection that probably doesn't need to be on the fall list because it just doesn't have any relevance, and it's a text-based game. Spellbound Spire. It's another VR game, so we'll leave that on the fall list. Spell Carts has no relevancy because it has only one review since 2020, so oops, I should have removed that, not just closed the tab. Speedy Gun Savage. It's another VR game that's in early access. I guess I'll give it a little bit more time. Probably doesn't deserve it. Space Mancer. We'll give more time to. And then Spaceflight Simulator is still in early access. And then Space Haven is in early access also. So yeah, we're not really going very far. Let's see. I did want to check to see if the Steam Deck was on sale during the Steam Summer Sale. Alright. And so clicking on the Steam Deck takes you to a completely different page with no blue background. What's interesting on this video is that one of the hands has a tattoo or a drawing on their hand. So you get these different colors in the circle here. There, yep, he has a Japanese Spirited Away type character. Very much does not look like Steam, which is probably a good thing. And the prices don't seem to have gone down at all as far as Steam Deck. When you scroll down, eventually you have a black background and then a white background and then a bright blue background. This does not feel like Steam at all. It defaults to black at the very bottom here. What's funny is this still is stored at steampalette.com though. It's just that is totally not. They're totally trying to make sure you know that it's not a digital thing you're buying. Yeah. And if the hardware was going to be on sale, it would probably be something. You get into this weird situation, certainly with something like Fatal Frame, Maiden in Blackwater. This is a relatively new game. It probably wouldn't hurt if more people bought it and led to maybe more re-releases. Although we may be out of the launch window at this point, so getting it on sale may not help too much. Anyways. Yeah, overall, as far as the Steam store sale, I'm not seeing too much that is going to be that different. Inherently, it has been a case that the launches in the past year and a half or so of video games have been few and far between, and they haven't been particularly great. So it's hard to really expect the sale to be that interesting when it's selling games that are potentially at least a year and a half old. I kind of am growing certainly to hate this season, the whole summer to Christmas season. so half a year. It's with Amazon Prime Day, which I probably should just mostly ignore, and with Black Friday and other sales points to get people to spend. There's a sale almost every month of significant importance. Lego sales also make that a nightmare. I'm going through my Twitter feed here. The game Riven was released 25 years ago this year. Let's see. And so they're just trying to get people excited around Riven again. Which, yeah. 25 years ago, they've had plenty of time to think about a soft reboot or even release their new game, and they're not doing a great job of releasing their new game. Like, it's very possible that Cyan just doesn't have the talent or the right people in charge to continue to make those types of games. It probably would be a smart idea if, like, I don't know, if Microsoft bought Cyan, that'd probably work fairly well, or if Ubisoft or EA had bought them in their heyday, or even Nintendo buying them now. Somebody else having that IP and real passion to potentially passion and skill. I could see Double Fine probably making a decent Myst type game. I could see the creator of The Witness, if he wasn't such a crazy kind of jerk character. He made The Witness, which is effectively a decent Myst type concept of a game. There's a parody game called The Looker that is not like actually a video game. It's a joke video game based on The Witness. I thought it might be a legitimate, just we're gonna rip off The Witness and make another game, but but yeah, it is just a joke game, so the puzzles aren't legitimate puzzles. There's an article here that says the crew for Sony's Horizon 2074 TV show include talent from The Boys and The Expanse, which doesn't inherently mean it's on-air talent. So I wouldn't be surprised if Amazon is hiring from within people they've already done business with to make sure that they get better production of TV shows. It would make a lot of sense, definitely. If you had a good experience working with somebody before, why not work with them again? Yep. And I scrolled down my Twitter feed and it only went so far, and then it decided to stop, and I guess that's probably an indication that I also too have to stop at this stream. Definitely feels like by engaging in the YouTube Shorts, I'm getting more people talking on the chat and more people viewing my videos. My last stream, I think, got 25 to 50 views on a Friday, which is quite a big number. So we're having some level of success. So I'm happy about that. We'll just hope that lasts and continues to grow, and that it would actually translate into subscriptions. That's going to be it for this recording. I did not see any hitching or any problems at all. So everything seems like it's working fine with the new RAM, which is good news. And my mouse even hitching up, I didn't really see that happen either. So that may have just been Myst 4 that was having problems with the mouse being hitchy. Anyways, that's going to be it for the stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, and comment on all my videos, because that helps me with YouTube. If you want to friend or follow me on any non-YouTube social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. That way you can get notifications um, wherever you want them. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gives me a game off my wish list or a gift card. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.